The one that happens to us all is that if we live, we mature physically. It happens, and there is not much we can do to prevent it or halt it. Physically, we get to the point where we can look after ourselves. But the issue is, do we take up the responsibility? Many do not. This is the immaturity dilemma, and it originated in Eden. Adam and Eve exhibit conventional apriotic behavior, the classical liberal syndrome. But what they manifested was a lack of maturity. They were physically mature, but they failed to acquire spiritual maturity, and so they had a sense of entitlement that is childish. We are required to replenish the earth, to take up our responsibility, and to restore what we consumed as dependence. In Eden, Adam and Eve were told they would not surely die by assuming the role of children and dependents. They were given clear instructions by God, and the repercussions of not following them was explained. Like all children, they thought they could have their cake and eat it too. Adam and Eve figured they could disobey, but get away with their disobedience. The knowledge of good and evil needs to be earned and worked for, not taken. We cannot truly know good and evil as children or as spiritually immature beings. Good and evil are known through work. Good and evil become known by the person becoming spiritually mature. The spiritually mature know what it means to be good morally, because they know how to create enough value to cover their costs. The knowledge of good and evil becomes manifested in the life of the spiritually mature. As we create value, we become perfected. We know good and evil through our work. We cannot acquire the benefits of the knowledge without the work. The knowledge is the work we do and the value we create. The mature understand nothing is free and no one is obliged to pay for the costs we create. This includes the cost of our knowledge. Learning is by doing. The mature are the adults. We are the ones who add value to the things of God. We build the civilizations, whereas peoples with too many parasites cannot develop advanced economies or civilize. They will have trouble even finding trustworthy persons to do the work that needs to be done. Too many will see any office or position as an invitation to use it as a base of power and personal enrichment. It is important to understand the dynamic of maturation. If I pay all of my costs and no one pays any cost I created, and I for every benefit I get and am paid for every benefit I provide, because no one is paying anyone else's costs, there is equality. If we have equality, we have perfection. Perfection is closely aligned with spiritual maturity, because the spiritually mature pay their own way. If we have equality, that is perfection. But we need an economics that enables us to take the beam out of our own eye and understand the costs we create. How to determine the cost of our actions if there is no ultimate standard or objective? If everyone is trying to get rich and it is relatively immaterial how this is done, at least for the person's own standard, how can we tell how well the economy is doing overall? Is the economy a collection or an amalgamation of all of our personal accounts, or something independent of the individuals who make it up? A body is individual cells, but it is something more than just the individual cells, which come into being and then die, but the body remains. Do we work simple to benefit ourselves, or even to benefit our clients? In some cases, our activities are tied to a company. We are expected to act in a way that will benefit the company we work for. This moves us one step from working only for our own benefit, but it does not address the wider question of our purpose in life. If our purpose is tied up in the prosperity of a business, is the business a sovereign entity? If we or a business is a sovereign entity, how do we refrain from externalizing costs onto other agents? If our success is tied up with the success of a business, and the business externalizes costs onto society and future generations in order to increase their profits, how do we refrain from being part of this? A life needs a purpose, if that purpose is only to survive. But for man, his purpose must be perfection. Dishonest people are spiritually immature. The dishonest are spiritual children because acting as a child, when one has reached physical maturity, is the sign that one is spiritually immature. As an adult, acting as a child is to be immature spiritually. Children are dependents. Adults are necessarily independent. To be a dependent as an adult is to be as a child. The spiritually immature are dishonest because one cannot live as a dependent adult without engaging in dishonesty. The spiritually immature must lie to some extent, and they must steal or scam resources from the spiritually mature. There is no logical way for it to be otherwise. Thus, to be spiritually immature is to be dishonest. Only the spiritually mature can be saved. Spiritual immaturity is the unforgivable sin because the spiritually immature cannot be saved. To aid and abet the spiritually immature and to enable adults to live as dependent children is a sin. The man who will not work, neither shall he eat. This is a verse most Christians have removed from their scripture. At least they have removed it from the verses which are visible to them. It is incumbent upon all persons to be mature adults. We were cared for as children. As soon as we are able, we need to cease being dependent and work towards not just being independent, but a person who can nurture their own children to independence. Ultimately, all it takes is honesty. We need to be honest about our level of maturity. We need to be honest about own ability to be independent. We need to be honest about our value and the value of what we are doing. To do this, we must subject ourselves to the truth, the perfect mind. Not everything has value nor has purpose because it fails to comply with the needs of the universe, meaning God's plan. There is something greater than us. Spiritual maturity is not an end in itself. It has a purpose. God is the purpose of all things. Spiritual maturity is maturity because it abides by the ultimate purpose. The immature never accept they exist for a reason other than their own pleasure. Liberals are people who see the ultimate purpose as their emotional fulfillment. Legalists, because they never accept the existence of a higher purpose, create law as a substitute. The church represents the highest purpose of man because it represents or manifests the binding together of man. This is a state of total trust, or what the Bible refers to as faith. The church is the sanctification and justification of man. It is the elimination of all dishonesty and therefore the elimination of all inequality and risk and threat of loss. The church is the embodiment and manifestation of faith. Liberalism represents freedom and man's rejection of God, because God does not represent freedom. Mankind wants freedom from sin. He thinks this gets rid of all of the negative and painful stuff. Getting rid of sin takes away freedom. Sin is what we consider freedom, because freedom is of the flesh. When freed of sin, we are freed of freedom. Only obedience is left. What is this reality composed of total capitulation to the rule of the Almighty? What we must comprehend is that obedience in the Spirit is dominion over the flesh. The reason for our belief, the reason for why we believe, is because faith enables maturity. Without faith, we remain spiritual children. Perfection is maturation because in our maturity we become perfect, that is, perfectly honest.